That night, I never expected my life to change. The street was empty, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, until I heard the sound of fists pounding against flesh. My heart told me to keep driving, to pretend I hadn't seen, but I slammed the brakes. Under the dim streetlight, 3 men were kicking a bloodied stranger, his gray coat torn, his face drenched in crimson. My hands shook as I hit the horn, blinding them with my headlights. "Stop, or I'll call the police." My voice trembled, but they scattered into the shadows. I rushed to the man, his breath shallow, his whisper faint. "Thank you. You saved me." I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that within days on Father's Day, of all days, he would return with a truth that would rip my family apart and force the world to see me differently. "My name is Penelope Caldwell, and for as long as I can remember, I've been nothing more than a shadow in my own house. From the outside, people look at my family and see perfection. My father, Thomas Caldwell, is admired in town as a brilliant real estate man, always in sharp suits and commanding every room with his booming voice. My mother, Linda, is the opposite, soft-spoken, gentle, forever knitting scarves she never wears. But she rarely dares to speak up, especially when my father's temper sparks. Then there are my siblings. Jacob, 20, is the golden boy. My father boasts endlessly about his sharp legal mind, predicting he'll become a top lawyer. Sophie, 23, is radiant, social, the kind of daughter everyone adores. At family gatherings, their every achievement is celebrated, champagne glasses raised, cheers echoing through the dining room. And me? I'm Penelope, the eldest, the disappointment, the family disgrace. I still remember the day I tried to earn his approval. I was 13, and I spent weeks painting a portrait of our family. Every brushstroke was my heart poured onto canvas, my mother's warm smile, Jacob's mischievous grin, Sophie's favorite dress, and even my father's proud posture. I wrapped it carefully, heart-pounding as I handed it to him on Father's Day. He unwrapped it, glanced once, and gave a sharp laugh. "Childish. What use is this? Learn to do something practical." He shoved the painting aside, and the room moved on without a second thought. But to me, it felt like my heart had been ripped open. That canvas stayed hidden in the cupboard, gathering dust, just like me. Moments like that multiplied. A perfect report card from me earned a nod barely. Jacob's school debate trophy? A full family celebration. Sophie's science project? A dinner in her honor. Whenever my father turned to me at the table, it was never to praise, it was to cut. "Penelope, speak louder. Stop hiding behind books. Look at Sophie. Look at Jacob. Why can't you be more like them?" Each word sank like a stone in my chest. I shrank smaller, learned to sit quietly, to fold into the background while my siblings basked in his pride. I became an expert at making myself invisible. At holidays, when families are supposed to feel warm and whole, I felt like a guest intruding in my own home. My mother would sometimes slip into my room after one of his tirades, kneel beside me, and whisper, "You're wonderful, Penny. Don't let his words destroy you." But her voice trembled too much to convince me. Love whispered in the shadows could never drown out the roar of humiliation. So I grew up this way, always on the outside of a perfect picture. A ghost in the Caldwell family portrait. Present, but never truly seen. It was a Thursday night, the kind of night when exhaustion clings to your bones. I had just finished tutoring a few students after my regular classes and was driving home, the hum of my old sedan filling the silence. The streets were nearly deserted, lit only by flickering yellow lamps that barely pierced the darkness. I rolled down the window for air, the crisp night wind brushing my face. That's when I heard a sound that didn't belong. A groan, low and broken, followed by the sharp smack of fists against flesh. My stomach dropped. I slowed the car as I turned into a narrow alley, and the sight that met me made my blood freeze. A man in a gray coat was sprawled on the ground, his body curled in on itself. Surrounding him were 3 young men, shadows in hoodies laughing as they kicked him again and again. Blood spilled from his mouth, dripping dark against the pavement. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't brave. But watching him, Defenseless and broken, something inside me snapped. I slammed my hand on the horn. The piercing blast shattered the silence, ricocheting off the alley walls. At the same time, I switched on my high beams, flooding the thugs in blinding light. "Stop it!" I shouted, my voice trembling but loud. "I've called the police." They froze, startled, squinting against the glare. One of them cursed under his breath. For a moment, I thought they might come after me. But then, muttering and spitting on the ground, they scattered into the darkness, disappearing like rats. My chest heaved as I pushed the car door open. My legs wobbled beneath me, but I forced myself forward until I knelt beside the man. He was older, salt and pepper hair matted with blood. His breaths were shallow, rattling. "Sir, can you hear me?" I whispered, panic rising. His eyes flickered open, clouded with pain, but somehow focused on me. His lips moved. I leaned closer. "Thank you. You saved me." The words were weak, but they struck me like a hammer. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911, my voice breaking as I rattled off the location. "Please, he's losing a lot of blood. Hurry!" While waiting for the ambulance, I tried to drag him out of the shadows and closer to the streetlight. He was heavier than I imagined, his coat soaked through with blood. My heart pounded, but I refused to let go. Minutes later, though, it felt like hours. The distant wail of sirens split the air. Red and blue lights spilled into the alley. Paramedics rushed forward, lifting him onto a stretcher. I followed, my hands still shaking, my heart refusing to slow. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that by stepping out of my car that night, I had just altered the course of my entire life. The next morning, I woke with barely 2 hours of sleep. My mind was still replaying the alley, the blood on my hands, the man's faint whisper. I brewed coffee, hoping the bitter taste would shake the images away, but it was the television that froze me. The morning news anchor spoke in her steady voice. Business magnate Richard Hale, 54, founder of Hale International Resorts, was brutally attacked last night but narrowly survived thanks to the intervention of an anonymous citizen. He remains in critical condition but is expected to recover. My mug slipped from my fingers, coffee splattering across the table. My eyes locked on the screen. The photo that flashed across the broadcast sent a chill through my body. The salt and pepper hair. The authoritative gaze. The same man whose blood had stained my jacket. Richard Hale. The name echoed in my head. Of course I had heard it before, who hadn't? He was the man who had turned a single hotel into an empire, a symbol of ambition and wealth. People in town whispered his name with reverence. Yet in that alley, he had been nothing but a broken man on the brink of death. My heart pounded as questions clawed through me. Why was he there, alone and vulnerable? Who wanted him dead? And why had fate chosen me, Penelope Caldwell, the invisible daughter, to be the one to save him? I tried to shove the thoughts aside. I told myself it was just coincidence, that our lives would never cross again. But no matter how hard I tried, his eyes lingered in my memory, the strange glint when he looked at me, the way his lips had trembled around those words. "Thank you. You saved me." For the next few days, I carried the secret like a stone in my chest. No one knew it was me. My father and siblings certainly didn't. At dinner, while they boasted about their achievements, I sat quietly, knowing that I had done something they could never imagine. But I couldn't speak of it. If I told them, they'd only laugh, twist it, make me feel small. Instead, I followed the updates on TV, each one feeding the unease in my heart. He was recovering. He was alive. And with every report, I wondered if he remembered me, the trembling girl in the alley who refused to look away. I didn't know it then, but the thread had already been tied. Our paths weren't finished. They were just beginning to knot tighter. And soon, that thread would yank my entire life into the light I had been denied for so long. Father's Day in the Caldwell house was always a performance. From the outside, it looked like love and tradition. Inside, it was a stage where my father's pride in my siblings gleamed, and where I became the family's favorite target. That Sunday, the house overflowed with relatives and neighbors. The dining table groaned under roasted meats, sparkling wine, and polished silverware. Laughter echoed from every corner. I stood near the back, clutching a glass of water, trying to look invisible. My father, Thomas Caldwell, rose from his seat at the head of the table. His booming voice silenced the chatter. He raised his glass. To my children, my pride, my legacy. First, he turned to Jacob. My son, the future lawyer. Brilliant, confident, destined to carry the Caldwell name to greatness. Applause erupted. Jacob smirked, soaking in the admiration. Then Sophie. My beautiful daughter, so full of charm. Everyone adores her, and rightly so. More cheers, more smiles. Finally, his eyes shifted to me. For a heartbeat, I thought just maybe he might say something kind, but then his lips curled. His words were sharp enough to slice me open. And this, he said, pointing his glass toward me, is Penelope, the family disgrace. The room burst into laughter. Relatives chuckled, cousins snickered, even Sophie covered her mouth, smiling at the cruel joke. My face burned, my throat tightened. I forced a brittle smile, pretending it didn't hurt, though inside it felt like my chest was collapsing. I wanted to shout. I wanted to scream that they didn't know me, that I had saved a man's life just days ago, that I wasn't a disgrace. But the words caught in my throat, trapped under years of silence. My mother, Linda, sat frozen, her eyes glassy with guilt. She didn't defend me. She never did. Her silence was as heavy as my father's cruelty. The evening dragged on like a nightmare. Toasts, jokes, stories of Jacob's internship and Sophie's new job interview. I sat there, barely breathing, the word disgrace echoing in my skull like a drum. When the plates were cleared and guests began leaving, I slipped out onto the porch, the night air cool against my burning cheeks. My hands trembled as I gripped the railing. Why was I never enough? Why did he despise me so deeply? I didn't know that my questions were about to be answered sooner than I imagined. Because as I stood there, fighting tears, the distant rumble of engines grew louder. Headlights appeared down the street, slicing through the darkness. One car, then two, then five. A convoy of luxury vehicles, sleek and intimidating, pulling up in front of the Caldwell house. The laughter inside died instantly. Curtains were drawn back. My father stepped outside, confusion etched on his face, and my heart began to pound. Part 5. The convoy arrives. The rumble grew louder, until the ground beneath my feet seemed to vibrate. I turned, stunned, as one black SUV after another lined up along the curb. Their polished exteriors reflected the porch lights of our house. Doors slammed in perfect rhythm, and men in dark suits stepped out, their movements crisp, controlled like soldiers in some private army. Gasps rippled through the crowd inside. Relatives rushed to the windows, whispering, "Who are they? Politicians? Celebrities?" My father pushed past me, his brows furrowed. He hated anything that stole attention from him. Then the back door of the lead car opened. Out stepped the man I thought I'd never see again. Richard Hale, even bruised and still recovering, he radiated authority. His salt and pepper hair caught the porch light, his suit impeccable, his eyes sharp as they scanned the crowd. He didn't hesitate. He strode toward our front steps, a thick envelope clutched in his hand. I froze. My breath caught in my chest. What was he doing here? Why at my house? "Mr. Hale?" one of my cousins whispered, her voice trembling. "Is that really him?" He stopped just a few feet from us, his gaze landing squarely on me. My knees threatened to buckle under the weight of it. "Penelope Caldwell," he said, his voice carrying across the yard, smooth but thunderous. "We meet again." The air seemed to vanish. My father's jaw dropped before twisting into a sneer. "What is this?" he barked. "What business do you have here, Hale?" Richard ignored him. His eyes never left mine. Slowly, deliberately, he raised the envelope in his hand for all to see. "I've come to deliver the truth," he declared. "The truth about this young woman standing before you." Gasps erupted. Whispers filled the air like a swarm of bees. My hands shook at my sides. My heart beat so violently I thought it might shatter my ribs. My father's face flushed red. "Enough of this circus," he growled. "Penelope is my daughter, and I won't have—" Richard cut him off, his voice sharper, louder. No, Thomas. She is not your daughter. She is mine. The yard fell into stunned silence. I felt every pair of eyes in the room behind me pierce my back. My mother stumbled forward, clutching the doorframe as though the ground itself had tilted. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The envelope in Richard's hand looked like it weighed more than the world. In that single moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I stood frozen on the porch, every nerve in my body screaming. Richard Hale's words seemed to echo endlessly. She is not your daughter. She is mine. The silence that followed was unbearable, broken only by the collective gasp of my relatives behind me. My father, Thomas Caldwell, turned crimson, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might shatter. "You liar!" he roared, shoving through the stunned crowd until he stood nose to nose with Richard. "Do you think you can waltz into my home with your money and your bodyguards and claim my child? I raised her. She owes me everything." Richard didn't flinch. His voice was calm, but every syllable struck like steel. "You may have raised her, Thomas, but you never loved her, and she owes you nothing." The envelope in his hand trembled slightly as he tore it open and pulled out a sheet of paper. The crowd leaned forward as he lifted it high. "This is a DNA test. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. He turned and fixed his gaze on me. "Penelope Caldwell is my biological daughter." The words cracked through the night like thunder. My father's face twisted into something monstrous. "No. You think a piece of paper erases 26 years? You think she's yours because some lab says so?" His finger jabbed at my chest. "She's nothing but a mistake. A useless, shameful mistake." My chest constricted. For years, I had endured those words, swallowing the pain, shrinking smaller and smaller. But this time, something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, my voice shaking at first, then rising stronger with each word. "Stop calling me a disgrace. Stop pretending you ever wanted me. I'm done being invisible in this house." He turned on me, eyes blazing. "You dare speak to me that way? After all I've done?" "Done?" My laugh was bitter, broken. "All you've done is tear me down. Every holiday, every dinner, every chance you had, you made sure I knew I was worthless. You celebrated Jacob and Sophie, but when it came to me, nothing but shame." Tears blurred my vision, but my voice grew louder. "I saved a man's life last week, Dad. Did you know that? Did you care?" "No, you were too busy reminding me I was a failure." The crowd murmured. My cousins exchanged uneasy glances. My mother's face crumpled, tears spilling as she whispered, "Penny, I'm sorry." But my father wasn't finished. He lunged toward me, his fists clenched, fury radiating from every pore. Before he could reach me, Richard stepped between us, his hand firm against Thomas's chest. "Touch her," Richard growled, his voice low but deadly, "and I will make sure you regret it." The two men locked eyes. My father's rage met Richard's unwavering authority. For the first time in my life, I saw my father falter just for a second. But enough. Behind them, relatives whispered fiercely, "Is it true? She's Hale's daughter?" No wonder. The weight of their stares pressed down on me, but for once, I didn't shrink. I stood taller, my voice clear. "I am not your disgrace," I said, looking straight at Thomas. "I am Penelope Hale, and I won't let you take my worth away ever again." Gasps erupted. My father staggered back, speechless, his face drained of color. Richard placed a steadying hand on my shoulder, his eyes full of pride and sorrow all at once. The truth was out. The chains that had bound me all my life shattered in that single night. But freedom came with fire, and I knew the battle was far from over. The days after that night blurred together, yet every detail burned itself into my memory. It was as if the Caldwell house had imploded the moment Richard raised that paper. Whispers spread like wildfire. Within hours, relatives were calling each other, neighbors peered from behind curtains, and by the next morning, headlines buzzed with the story. "Hotel tycoon Richard Hale acknowledges secret daughter." For the first time, my name was everywhere, but not because of shame, because of truth. My father, Thomas, was furious. His reputation as the pillar of the community crumbled. People who once respected him now whispered about betrayal and lies. At business luncheons, I heard he was avoided, his phone calls unanswered. He shouted at anyone who dared mention my name, but his silence only fueled the rumors. My mother, Linda, called me one night. Her voice cracked over the phone. "Penny, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you by keeping quiet. I was wrong. I let you suffer when I should have fought for you." Her words broke me. I wanted to scream, to ask why she let him belittle me for so long, but I couldn't. Instead, I whispered back, "I just wanted to be loved, Mom." She sobbed, and I hung up before my own tears swallowed me whole. As for Jacob and Sophie, their eyes changed when they looked at me. Jacob, the golden boy, couldn't hide his jealousy. "So, now you're the heiress, huh?" He sneered when we crossed paths at the grocery store. Sophie avoided me altogether, her silence sharper than any insult. The bond we might have had was gone, replaced by rivalry and suspicion. But in Richard's world, I was no longer invisible. He brought me into his mansion, into boardrooms filled with polished executives and dazzling chandeliers. At first, I felt like an imposter, just a teacher, a girl used to being overlooked. The staff whispered when I passed. Some smiled politely, others frowned, muttering, "She doesn't belong here." But Richard never let me falter. "You don't need to prove yourself to anyone but yourself," he told me one evening as we sat in his study, thick contracts spread across the desk. His eyes softened. "They'll doubt you. Let them. What matters is that you rise above it." So, I studied. I stayed up late learning about markets, revenues, partnerships. I stumbled in meetings, stumbled harder in negotiations. Once, I almost cost the company a client when I misunderstood a clause. Whispers grew louder. "She's just a liability." I almost gave up. I almost ran back to my tiny apartment, back to obscurity. But then, I thought of that night on the porch, when I had finally found my voice against Thomas. I thought of Richard stepping between us, declaring, "She is mine." No, I couldn't give up. Little by little, I grew stronger. My questions in meetings grew sharper, my confidence steadier. Richard watched silently, pride flickering in his eyes. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living in the shadows. I was standing in the light. But light attracts attention and danger. I could already feel the weight of what was coming. The Caldwell name wasn't done haunting me, and the world wasn't done testing if I truly belonged to Richard Hale's empire. 2 years later, Father's Day finally arrived again, but this time, it no longer felt like a day of dread. The Caldwell house, once a place of humiliation, was now just a fading memory. I hadn't set foot there since that night when Richard Hale tore open the truth. Instead, I found myself in the garden behind Richard's mansion, a place filled not with grandeur, but with something I had never known at home: peace. The long table was simple, decorated with fresh flowers and home-cooked dishes, no crowd of judgmental relatives, no staged speeches about achievements, just Richard, a handful of close friends, and me. For the first time, I felt that Father's Day might actually mean something. I sat across from him, watching as the late afternoon sun softened the lines on his face. His salt and pepper hair had turned more silver, but his eyes, those steady, determined eyes, still glowed with pride. He raised his glass, his voice warm, strong, steady. "To Penelope, to my daughter, to our journey together." The words struck me harder than any insult Thomas Caldwell had ever thrown at me. My throat tightened as I raised my glass in return. "To you, Dad," I whispered, my voice breaking, but this time not from pain, from gratitude. As laughter rose around the table, I allowed myself to breathe. I thought about how far I had come, from the trembling girl standing in the shadows of her family's scorn, to the woman learning to navigate a world far bigger than she ever imagined. I wasn't just Richard Hale's daughter now. I was Penelope Hale, someone who had earned her place. Not because of a last name, but because I chose to stand up when silence was easier. Yet, even in this peace, ghosts lingered. My mother's face haunted me, sometimes her frail voice whispering apologies, her guilt etched into every tear. Jacob's bitterness, Sophie's silence, Thomas's rage, they were scars I carried. But scars don't define weakness. They prove survival. I had survived, and I had risen. As the sun dipped low and golden light bathed the garden, Richard placed a hand on my shoulder. His eyes shimmered. "You've come so far, Penny, and I know you'll go farther still." Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled. "Thank you for giving me the chance to become who I was always meant to be." In that moment, I realized the greatest gift wasn't his wealth, his empire, or even the truth of my bloodline. It was the freedom to rewrite my story. For years, I believed I was nothing but a disgrace, trapped in the shadows of a family portrait where I never belonged. But now, I knew better. The truth, once buried, had set me free, and freedom had given me the courage to find my worth, not in their approval, but in my own. That Father's Day, I wasn't a ghost. I wasn't a mistake. I was seen. I was chosen. I was loved. I was Penelope Hale.